Hey everybody, so this is Emily from Life Enrichment, and I just wanted to do a video here today talking about some of my favorite podcasts. So for those of you that may not know what a podcast is, it's essentially a talk show that anybody can create about any topic that they wish. There are people that do talk shows about specific TV shows, specific movies, books, life advice. There's any topic you can think of, there's probably a podcast about it. So what I wanted to talk about is a couple of my favorite podcasts that I wanted to recommend to you. So in case you don't know how to access podcasts, what I do is I listen through the app Spotify. Spotify. Now this is a free app that you can get on any smartphone, and the free version of the app may not necessarily let you choose certain episodes of a podcast, but you can hit shuffle on that podcast and you'll be able to listen to random episodes. Most podcasts you don't really need to listen to in a certain order, so that's one option. I've also made sure that the podcasts I'm recommending today are also available on Apple Music. So if you have an iPhone, or not Apple Music, I'm sorry, Apple Podcasts. So if you have an iPhone, you already have access to all of the podcasts that are available from Apple. So again, these podcasts are available on that outlet as well. And if for some reason you can't get Spotify or you don't want to download Spotify, there are lots of different websites that you can just find online. If you search free podcasts, like I said, there are tons out there, and there are tons of different resources for you to find them. So if you need more advice about that, feel free to ask, but those are the two places that I recommend. If you have an iPhone, Apple Podcasts are always available, and again, Spotify, that free app, will give you that option as well. So let's get started. The first podcast that I'm going to recommend is called Unspooled. So if you are a film buff, this podcast is for you. Basically, it's this actor named Paul Scheer and his friend, let me double check on her name, Amy, oh my goodness. She is a film critic, and her name is Amy Nicholson. She is, like I said, a film critic, and what they do is they have been watching AFI's 100 Best Films of All Time. So for every film, they have a full episode about that film, usually around 45 minutes to an hour. And what they do is really great. They break down the plot of the film. They talk a lot about behind-the-scenes info. They do interviews with some experts in the industry, whether that be on the creative side, actors. They really just delve into the meat of those films. So again, that's the AFI, the American Film Institute's list of 100 greatest films of all time. So if you're looking for a good episode to listen to, the one that I recently listened to was for the film Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. And this is a film by Stanley Kubrick, which is a director that I'm not too necessarily familiar with. I know he has a couple other films on the list, 2001: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange. These are some of his great films, and he's considered one of the greats directors-wise. So what's really interesting is they kind of analyze his mind and his background, and his sources of creativity. So that's a really fun podcast to listen to. What I'm going to play for you right now is just kind of a preview of what is Unspooled. And this is, again, Paul Scheer is an actor, and film critic Amy Nicholson. And we're going to listen to it here.
Hey everybody, I am Paul Scheer.
And I am Amy Nicholson.
And welcome to Unspooled. Very exciting. It's a brand new podcast that we are embarking on, and hopefully with you.
So what is Unspooled? Because, Paul, on your show, How Did This Get Made, you talk about the worst movies of all time.
Yes, movies that are so bad, they're amazing.
And on my show, The Canon, we vote on movies that are maybe important, but we go for like liminal stuff. We're looking for the debate, the conversation, the argument.
Exactly.
There's no debate here in Unspooled, where we are going to go through the AFI Top 100 list of films. And you know what? As soon as we announced this, I got all these people, you got all these people saying, we want to watch these movies with you, which is awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So this is something where you can come along with us on this journey. We're using the AFI 2007 list. You know, I realized in looking at this list that I only know a lot of these movies through the meme, right? Or the slogan, like, are you talking to me? Like, yes, I've seen Taxi Driver, but I don't remember anything else besides that scene. Or, Citizen Kane is the sled, like there are all these movies that have just become images or lines. But what is actually the movie behind them?
Exactly. You're talking about like the memification of culture, which I worry about all the time, that we reduced 2 hours of a project that involves thousands of people making it, all sorts of interesting moments, into just that touchstone. Oh yeah, the movie where he looks in the mirror and he talks real tough. Yeah. But there's a whole movie around that I think we forget about.
I think part of the fun of this is looking at all these like holes and gaps that I have in my movie knowledge, because I've seen a lot of movies. I consider myself an active moviegoer. Did I see Jumanji? Yes, I did. But I have not seen like a Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire musical. And I want to kind of close that gap a little bit, because I think you can learn a lot by watching different styles of directors and actors, and you see kind of where some of our favorite filmmakers have been influenced and where things originated from, ideas and everything.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a very long preview, but this is what the cover photo looks like if you're looking for that podcast. Okay, so let's go to our next one here. So the next one is a podcast called What's Her Name? It's actually all one word, What's Her Name? And what's interesting is this is a podcast to celebrate Women's History Month. So if you're a history buff, this is a really interesting podcast for you to try. An episode that I would recommend is called The Disappearing Woman. It's about Adelaide Herman. She was a famous magician for about 50 years during the golden age of magic. And what's interesting is that at the time, she was more well-known than her contemporary, Houdini. But after her death at the age of 79, she became forgotten. And I myself have never heard of this woman, but I was very intrigued to hear her story on this podcast. What's interesting is when I was trying to pick an episode to talk about is I hadn't heard of any of these historical figures that they mention. They have a ton on here. People that I've never heard of, but definitely stories that I'm intrigued by. So that's a really good one. There's women scientists, women authors, women, I believe there's a women astronaut on here. So again, this is really good for history. If you're looking to delve into maybe some history that you haven't heard of before, this will definitely be the podcast for you. So again, that's called What's Her Name? All one word. That one's a really good one. I don't have a preview of that one. But again, hopefully you're still interested in it. The next podcast I'm going to talk about is, again, a podcast that I'm really excited about, and this is called Dolly Parton's America. So if you're a big music fan, or, I mean, even if you're not big into Dolly Parton's music, you know Dolly Parton, you love Dolly Parton. We all love Dolly Parton. So really what this podcast is about, it's a 9-episode series, and what it does is it dives into the question of how and why Dolly Parton has become this unifying point for all of America. They talk about the fact that we can all agree that we love Dolly Parton. It doesn't matter if you're, from Michigan or Missouri or California or Florida, anywhere that you come from, no matter your background, you love Dolly Parton. And I think it really does a great job of really getting into her cultural importance, her cultural significance, and everything that she's contributed to America and to American history. So an episode that I would recommend is called The Only One for Me, Jolene. So I'm sure you've heard the song Jolene. It goes into not only the meaning of the song itself, but kind of what it meant for country music as a whole and how groundbreaking it was. I was listening to this the other day, this specific episode, and it was great. They were going into how much she's changed. The cheating song has become kind of a trope in country music, and until her song had come out, a lot of other country music artists, they used Loretta Lynn as an example. The Other Woman song was, a song full of anger or, revenge on getting on this other woman that may have, taken your man. But what Dolly does is so unique in that she's, making a plea to this woman, and instead of showing hatred towards this woman, she's kind of admiring all of the attributes that she has that would make her man, want to leave her for Jolene. So again, this is really good podcast if you love Dolly Parton. If you don't know that much about Dolly Parton, I feel like this will be a great introduction. The man who hosts the podcast, he actually has been following Dolly on tour for about 2 years now. So he's gotten to do interviews with her, and so he really has gotten to know her on a more personal level. So what I'm gonna do now is play you the trailer for this.
Hey, this is Jad. Dolly Parton's America is supported by BetterHelp. If you're struggling and not sure how to get help, BetterHelp Online Counseling offers licensed counselors specializing in issues like anxiety and depression. Connect with your counselor through video, phone, chat, and text. BetterHelp is a truly affordable option. Listeners get 10% off your first month when you visit betterhelp.com/pardonme.
Listener supported. WNYC Studios.
America from a Dolly's eye view is this quivering mass of irreconcilable contradictions.
I'm going to be both. I'm going to be adored by church ladies and the gays.
Yeah, the sexuality, the spirituality, the sensuality. That's exactly who I am.
She's just a beautiful fountain of goodness.
It's me.
100% Dolly is an extractive capitalist.
I always say I give God the credit, I just want the cash.
In terms of cultural power, I think she's second to Walt Disney.
This is Jed Ibenrod from Radio Lab More Perfect. For the last 2 years, I've been following Dolly Parton around the world. Trying to figure out who she is.
You'd be surprised to know who I am.
That's why we're here. We're trying to find
I know, but you're never going to find everything out. I'm a mystery to myself.
I'm trying to answer the seemingly simple question, what is Dolly Parton's America?
Well,
Answers coming soon on Dolly Parton's America.
Dolly Parton's America is supported by Third Love. Third Love.
All right. So that one is a lot of fun. I really like that, and hopefully you will too. Okay, so let's get into our next podcast I am recommending, and that would be a podcast called Finding Fred. And this is a 10-part series, and in case you're interested, this is a podcast about Fred Rogers, or as he is better known, Mr. Rogers. So what this does is the man who hosts the podcast, he is a psychologist, and he's really delved into the meaning of all the lessons that Mr. Rogers incorporates into his TV series. So it really connects the lessons that we all learn from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and connects it to our real life experiences today. It really does a great job of showing that he was so much more than just a children's show host. He was radical, spiritual, revolutionary. He really just created this whole new genre of television that really explained things to kids that maybe weren't really discussed before. Emotions, feelings, how to deal with grief, how to deal with racism. So this was something that was definitely unique for its time. An episode I'd like to recommend is called A Genius of Empathy. And what it does is it discusses, the importance of empathy, especially in today's world and the struggles that we face today. It explores it almost as a science and kind of discusses Mr. Rogers as an expert in this field. He really was such a great practicer of empathy. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to play you the preview of the series.
I want to ask you if Fred Rogers were here today and you could sit down with him and he sat across from you and said, "Hi, Ashley, it's nice to meet you. I'm Fred." I want to know what you would ask him.
I mean, it wouldn't be one question. I want you to tell me about every person you've ever loved. I think there's so much to learn from listening to people talk about the people who make them feel a certain way.
So there I am, on the couch with Mr. Rogers.
Wow, look at your face.
Look at my face. The way that he looked at me, I felt like he saw me.
kids, they grow out of him as though they've graduated from Fred Rogers. But it still resonates.
Are you okay today? I am, because I'm getting to visit with you now. That makes my day a special one.
He had a calling, one that allowed him to communicate in a way that the ordinary person does not.
When we people can understand our feelings and talk about them, we're free to be who we like being.
For 30 years, Mr. Rogers looked through our television screens and said to millions of kids, I see you. I like you just the way you are. But what do we miss about Fred's message when we only focus on the sweater and the sneakers? I mean, does Fred Rogers matter today?
I think a lot of people just thought that he was very simplistic, but there was an incredible depth and call to action on the show.
I'm Carvel Wallace, and this is Finding Fred, a 10-part series from iHeartMedia and Fatherly in partnership with Transmitter Media about the life, the thinking, and the work of Fred Rogers, the man.
All right. So that is Finding Fred, and I forgot to show you that's the cover for that one. I realized I forgot to show you the other one, so let me do that for you real quick. I have one more podcast I'm going to recommend. So here's the cover of Dolly Parton's America. It's her holding a baby lamb. And then we have, what was the other? What's her name? That one's like a silhouette of a woman. So the last podcast I'm going to recommend, so here's the one for What's Her Name. That's the historical one about female figures. The last podcast I'm going to recommend is called Overheard from National Geographic. So if you're someone that likes to read National Geographic, or if you like, watching the Nature Channel or anything like that, this would be a good podcast for you. The episodes are a little bit shorter than normal podcasts. Usually podcasts last anywhere between 30-45 minutes. Some of them are up to an hour, but this National Geographic one is usually around 20 minutes each. So that one's kind of nice because you can listen to a couple episodes, at a time. This one is actually really interesting. So what it revolves around is it's overheard conversations. It's people that are eavesdropping on their fellow coworkers at National Geographic, and they just overhear people's conversations or like the different topics that they're maybe writing articles about. And it shows little snippets of different interviews with scientists, explorers, experts in their field, and it really covers a variety of topics. Two of the episodes that I'll recommend is, one of them is called The Glass Stratosphere, so that's a good one for Women's History Month. It discusses the first women's space program, and there was this NASA physician. He had a special psychological and physical test that he would give the male astronauts before they, went on their voyage and whatnot, and it kind of talks about what happened when he decided to start giving this test to women, and it has personal interviews with two of the women that were involved in that experiment at the time. So that one's a really great episode. Another one I'd like to recommend is called The Frozen Zoo, and this was something that I had no idea about, but I was definitely fascinated to learn about. So what it talks about is the fact that there are 1 million animal and plant species on the Earth right now that face extinction, that are threatened with extinction. So what some scientists are actually doing is freezing cells of DNA or cells of different animals and plants to try to see if maybe somewhere down the line in the future there's some sort of science that can maybe not replicate these cells, but breed these cells and maybe create new life and try to even bring animals back from extinction if it comes to a point where those animals are extinct. So I think that one's really fascinating to listen to as well. So those are all the podcasts that I have for you today. Here's the photo of the Overheard at National Geographic one. There's the photo for that one. So I hope that you're able to find something that you like within this list. I try to add a little bit of variety to it. So if there's any that you like to listen to, please let me know. If enough people come, maybe I'll make another podcast video. Like I said, there are tons of podcasts out there. So if there's a topic that you like, that you're hoping maybe you can listen to a podcast to, let me know, and maybe I can try to find one for you. Again, if you don't know what a podcast is, and you'd like to learn a little bit more about it, I would say these will be a pretty good start. And feel free to ask me questions if you want. If you see me, in the halls and you want to know more, feel free to ask. So I hope you're able to find something you enjoy. Thanks for listening. Have a good day. Bye.